you are in your time zones. Today, I'm very delighted to have a very interesting guest with us. That's Dr. Francine Marz. Francine is the culinary director of the Northampton Community College in the Lehigh Valley in Pennsylvania. And I'm Dirk Frese. I'm the executive director of Wisdom. Wisdom stands for Women in Science, Demonstrating Outstanding Merits. And we are helping young women in science to really make the move from academia into industry and help to overcome obstacles that sometimes might happen there. Today, our angle of the discussion is slightly different. Francine, I'm excited to talk to you. We know each other for quite some time already. You are in your chef gear there, and that is very good because that gives us some background what you are doing. You love food, you love to train students, but more than that, you recently filed your dissertation and got graduated with honors. So congrats on that one.
Thank you.
And you did your dissertation not on cooking. I just read the title here, the career pathways, aspirations, challenges, and opportunities of mid-level female community college administrators in Pennsylvania. Like usual, dissertation titles are sometimes a mouthful. What it comes down to is really what are women facing as challenges in academia. So that's very, very interesting what you did there. So I read, not in detail, but I read your dissertation and found something very interesting in there. But perhaps you should introduce yourself first, Francine, who you are, what you are doing, how you came there, and then we just dive into it.
All right, sounds great. So I am Dr. Chef Francine Marz, originally from Long Island, New York, but kind of traveled the country. I moved to South Carolina when I was 9 and fell into cooking when I was about 16. I actually fell a second time down the bunny hill when I was skiing and tore my ACL. Originally, I had planned on being a nurse, and what I did was I stayed home and watched cooking shows for most of the day because I was doing some homeschooling and at that point. And so I said, hey, I want to be a chef. And so in my high school senior year, I went to a Vo-Tech high school in South Carolina and fell in love with cooking. And somebody came to the class and started talking about Johnson & Wales and a recipe contest. And so I said, I'm going to enter, and wound up like getting second place. So I got a $25,000 scholarship to go to culinary school and in Charleston, South Carolina. This was when they had the campus there, and went to school, loved it. I got my associate's degree in culinary, associate's degree in baking and pastry, and then a bachelor's in food service management. Long story short, I wound up getting a sous chef position at Marriott for 2 years in Charlotte, North Carolina at the Renaissance. And then I got a job at the Marriott in Albuquerque, New Mexico as banquet chef. And then a year later, at the age of 27, I became executive chef of that hotel.
Wow.
It was a 310 room property. We had 27,000 square feet of meeting space, and I had about 30 plus employees, some of them like at that point, like 2 to 2.5 times of my age. So it was very interesting, very difficult, but I always knew that I was destined for more. And so at that point, I got tired of all the hours. And so in my early 30s, I moved to Phoenix. Anyways, I fell into academia in about 2008, 2009. And when the economy kind of fell apart, and at that point, culinary just soared. And so they were looking for instructors. I wound up going on as an adjunct, and I did stand-up comedy while I was in college. So I loved teaching because I was like, sweet, I got a new audience every semester, every quarter. So it worked out great. And took students overseas and went to China 4 times, and just like really just went further than I ever imagined in my career. And, you know, it's so interesting because people say, well, if you can't do, you teach, which is so wrong, because I know way more now than I've ever done than I did when I was in the industry. You know, I while I was at the Art Institutes in Phoenix, I moved all the way up from an instructor all the way to assistant director to director. And then I was scouted out by a headhunter to open up a culinary school in Montgomery County in Pennsylvania. So I moved across country with a dog and a cat and drove for 4 days and wound it up in Lansdale, Pennsylvania. And then the woman who was the head of my hiring committee at Montgomery County Community College actually moved up to Northampton. And so I joked and said, hey, if you ever need a culinary director, let me know, haha. And well, she did. So that's how I wound up at Northampton. But in the meantime, between Art Institute and now I got my master's degree in an MBA in international business and finance. And then I just finished up my doctorate of education in innovation and organizational leadership. So I have a very interesting path, and I'm far from done, but it's very much a windy road. Let's put it that way. Very windy road that I've taken.
Wow, very interesting resume, very interesting. A little bit winding, you're saying, but very interesting cornerstones. So just two things stick to mind here. First of all, your injury on the bunny hill. So I also had a broken leg in ski racing and ended up with a doctorate as well. I don't know whether that's coincidence.
Maybe that's a thing. I don't know. I hope not.
The other thing is that you did stand-up comedy, so you love entertaining, and I think entertaining means also motivating people, and that seems to be really one of the basic capabilities to have when you're teaching. So you're doing that very well. I spoke to some of your students, and they're so highly motivated by you, and yeah, your personality speaks to itself. So that's great. Thank you very much. Yeah, and when you went to do your doctorate, you were looking into a problem, and I just read from your statement of problem here. You found that 60% of community college presidents have held executive positions on campus before becoming president. And there are many, many female people in academia in these colleges, but not so many presidents. So you think there is a disconnect there. And you thought this kind of tension, which somehow becomes apparent here, has to have a reason, an underlying reason. And to study that, I think you did quite a lot of interviews based on the COVID-19 crisis. You did that virtually most of the time, unfortunately, but you found very interesting things there, made many observations and boiled them down into 6 main ones. And I would love to listen to you what these main findings were and what these obstacles were that you found.
Well, so it's interesting. So one of the biggest things, and you're right, what I wrote in there regarding about a disconnect between not only with VPs, but also with mid-level administrators, the fact that if you look around at a community college, majority of them are female. And but it really dawned on me that it was like, I think 30% or 32% nationally were actually female community college presidents. So I said, there's got to be an issue. There's got to be a problem. What is going on? And I found out that there's a lot of similarities between education and actually in business executive positions as well. And I'm actually, interestingly enough, I'm going through some of those challenges myself, right? I don't have any children, but one of the biggest things was, issues with time management, having to handle the family, in addition to at the age that I am and other people around me in a mid-level position, you're dealing with aging parents, right? So now you're handling, and as a female, you feel a sense of, that pressure of having to handle it all. And several of the women quoted that, stating that, I feel like I've got to just do it all, be superwoman. I've got to, run 24/7. And it was kind of fascinating that it was more than 1, 2, 3 people that were saying that. Another big thing was the queen bee syndrome, and women, and it happens with males too, just in a different way. You've got hazing with males, and then with females it's queen bee, where it's I've had to struggle working my way up, so I'm going to make your life miserable also. And you either, as a human being, you either change the behavior as you move up, or you repeat the behavior like you would, like if you're an abuser or in an abusive relationship, it's the same thing. And so I found that pretty fascinating as well, that it's women who hold information, women who uh, do things subtly to degrade or keep other women down, and ways that to keep women so that they can't move up, right?
Mm.
And that, I think, was the biggest between that and the discrimination of women, not only via from male to female and the good old boy network still being alive, but in addition of the discrimination of women of color. That was, I think, the most disheartening thing that I heard, the most I think emotional piece that really took me back. And as a white female, it opened my eyes more so than ever. I feel like I'm very traveled and very open to begin with. I think I have very I don't want to say liberal views, but not so conservative views. And this just made me even more aware of what's going on. And it made me fight for not just myself, but for other women out there. And there was a quote when I defended it, says, a strong woman fights for herself, but a stronger woman fights for everybody else. And that to me was a very
resonating,
powerful statement. Yeah. And that's what I ended my defense with.
Wow, that's very powerful. So in fact, there are then two obstacles at the main time. On the one hand, you have the discrimination of women. On the other hand, they don't help each other as you would expect them to do so. How unfortunate, because then they have double the difficulties compared to men because of that.
Very much so. And then, you have where, women have to, let's put it this way. So men go out after work, they connect, they go on the golf course. That's how they do business. And it's kind of becomes this, again, the good old boy club, right? Well, women are too busy to do that. And if you're able to network, then you have to do it very quickly. You have to go in and out. However, then it's perceived differently. Some of the comments that were made from the women were like, I have to, every time I send an email, I have to think about how it's going to be perceived. So not only are you dealing with the difficulties of being in a mid-level position, you've got employees that you're dealing with, you've got your mid-level manager, so then you have your executive managers that you're dealing with, but then you've got, your colleagues that potentially could or would be fighting against you, potentially for the same position that you're trying to go out for. There's always politics involved in academia as well as in business. I find it fascinating how much politics there is in education and academia. I never in my life knew that it existed as much as it did. And that plays a huge part in moving forward and getting promoted. And it's kind of who you know as well. And I compare community colleges and like a lot of universities as well to like mom and pop restaurants. Everybody's got their own set of rules. They've got their own different set of benefits, HR, I mean, you name it. So, at the time I did the study in 2020, it was, I think, 1,103 community colleges. So there's really like 1,103 mom and pop restaurants that are all running things very differently. But besides that, you've got also unqualified leaders, right? You've got people that are rising through the ranks. You've got people that are retiring and having to take over these positions, and they're not qualified. They're not ready. And when you think of being a leader in a position of leadership, you have to be a jack or Jill of all trades. And, when you're moving into a school that's a unionized school and you don't have experience with that, honestly, union will eat you alive if you have, you don't have good negotiation skills, or you don't hire the right people to handle those things. Or you come from a school, let's say from the Midwest, and you go to something that's more of an urban school, very different population, different board of trustees.
I
You've
see
got
that.
all these
Yes.
different bosses to handle and deal with. So again, there's really, not only are not women not helping each other, but there's really no place to help prepare women, because the mentors aren't there, because they're not reaching out an arm to say, hey, let me help you. And if they are, they're very lucky to have done so, because with my research also, most people have not been trained on how to be a mentor or even be a mentee. So say I get a mentor, I don't even know what to do with them. You have all of these challenges and you're trying to figure this out on top of handling stuff at home.
You mentioned a lot of very important things. I think leadership skills, for example, you need that everywhere. You need that to really lead yourself, to lead others, to really rise up through the ranks, as you said. And that's something which is really hardly ever trained anywhere in university, whether in business school or scientific school. That's really usually left out, unfortunately, because that's so important in every career later on. And nobody is training you how to do that, how to be a good leader, first of all. The other thing that you mentioned was this boys club and playing golf and networking there. Yes, with golf, I'm not a golf player, but yeah, you can connect with 1, 2, 3, 4 people at a time. Whereas I think women are very strong, not on the golf course, perhaps, as you refer to it, but perhaps in social media. I think, couldn't that compensate that somehow, that you can connect immediately to 100 or 1,000 people, specifically right now in the pandemic where nobody is able to go out? Doesn't this become more important? Do you see a change there, that everything goes on social media, LinkedIn, Twitter, and these kind of likes? Does that help women to connect and to be more competitive compared to men then, or is that a dream?
No, I think that it's a great idea, but what many of the women stated and suggested is that there needs to be networking events. People need to come together, but it takes time and energy. And if you're, again, a mid-level administrator and you're having to handle all of these other things, the last thing you want to do is start an organization to help that, help these women. And there are organizations that are out there. It's just information is not also sent out to them as well. They're not aware of things. There are, statewide symposiums and things like that. And there's groups for presidents, there's groups for VPs, but again, nothing for the mid-level administrator. There's nothing to help really grow the mid-level administrators. If you're at a hotel or you work for a hotel chain or a restaurant chain, and again, I go back to food because that's right, wearing a chef jacket, right?
Yes,
yes. But if you're in a restaurant chain or even retail, right, they're always having the manager trainees constantly, right? You're hired as an assistant manager or a manager in training, and they take you around to the different stores. And so one of the things I proposed was creating some sort of president in training or vice president in training program that could go around and jump in for interim positions. Once they get a handle on things, then either A, they stay in that position if they feel it's a good fit, or B, they jump back in the pool if they feel like they need more experience. Or C, they go out and they find another position. The other thing, again, with challenges for women is that location is an issue. Most people, that have children or parents or both, don't want to pick up and leave. They don't want to pick up and be like, I'm, going to move across country. So location is really a factor as well, as far as what's open and around in the area. And a lot of people are just waiting for somebody to retire to be able to potentially have the opportunity to move up.
So hopefully this videocast series also helps in networking here. By the way, to our viewers, please don't hesitate to reach out to us, to Francine directly or to me directly. By the way, you find us under womenin.science, that's our website, or women_in_science on Instagram or our YouTube channel. So just to mention that this is also an opportunity to network. And you mentioned something else. You mentioned mentoring and coaching. I think that's really key. That's something we have seen also in the scientific community. And you're right, nobody is trained to become a mentor. This just happens to be, and that's probably not the right way to do it. Therefore, classes would really be a great idea, how to train people to become an effective mentor or what to do as a mentee. Nobody's talking about these things. Great that you brought these up, Francine. That's amazing.
I mean, when it's interesting because you're like, oh, I need a mentor, right? And then you go out, you get a mentor, and you're like, okay, well, now what do I do with it, right? Like,
yes.
And then especially if they're really, really busy. I mean, I'm not really doing anything, I don't want to say to help the mentor. It's kind of they're doing it out of the goodness of their own heart. So you don't want to step on their toes, but you don't want to be, too aggressive, but you don't want to not be aggressive enough. And so, as a woman, you tend to deal with that as well, as like what's enough and what's not enough. And you don't want to seem to be, too assertive or whatever you want to call it. And but then you don't want that opportunity to have a mentor to go by. But then again, like I said, what do you do with them? You just sit there and you have lunch and you talk about it, or you talk about issues or problems. But then the other thing is that you got to get along with that mentor. So do you seek that mentor out? Do they seek you out? Like, and that, I mean, so there's just this whole, I think, web of things that are not only challenges, but are things that have not been, I think, addressed in not just for mid-level people like myself, but just for women in general.
Yeah, and that's what we have on our agenda as Wisdom. We want really to create a mentorship network and really to match, as you said, perfectly well, mentors and mentees, really like in a matching program. That's so important. Something else that you mentioned in your dissertation is also, you were just talking about being assertive. You mentioned also that a lot of people mentioned to you the lack of confidence. So what can we do about that? Is that something you think is specific to the female people in academia? And what do you think about that? Is that also related to imposter syndrome to a certain degree?
I think it's not related just to people in academia. I can tell you that right now. And
of course,
I think it is very much a part of imposter syndrome. But I also think it's just, it's funny. There's been studies out there that saying that if a male has, they said it was like, I think 20% of the characteristics or qualities in a job posting, that they'll just go ahead and go for it, and they figure out the 80%, right? Whereas a woman has to go down the list and check off all the qualification. And if there's one or two things that they feel that they're not qualified to do, they won't apply for the job. So it's almost like you need your own cheering network, and you need other people to kind of help you say, yeah, you can do this, or I think this job is good for you, or whatever it may be, because you see yourself in one way, but yet people see you very differently. I was in class and we had to do an exercise in my doctoral program, and we had to videotape ourselves or record ourselves.
It's a very good exercise.
I just dated myself, and we had to watch it, and it was really hard for me to watch myself go through the motions and talk to people of a random conversation. And I looked at the video and I go, now I know why people are somewhat intimidated by me, because of just the way I look and I present myself. And so that kind of really opened my eyes. And so some women take that as being overconfident, when I have just the same issues as every other woman that are walking down the street, right? So people then kind of hate on me because they think that I'm perceived as being overconfident or cocky, when that is not even the truth. So again, it's a clash of personalities, clash of different, just even management or leadership styles. And it weighs on you as a human being. And so then again, it kind of also pushes against your self-confidence.
And that probably really is based out of in society as well as in different cultures as well, I'm sure. So that's very difficult for us to change that. We can try one step after the other to change something like we do right now in this video cast, but yeah, it needs a lot of change society-wise. I'm 100% with you.
I think people I honestly think the first step is talking about it, because I don't
Yeah.
think people are talking about it.
Thank you very much, Francine, first of all, because you're right. Talking about it is the first stepstone that we have really to go for. And therefore, this is very helpful to talk to you about that. But coming back that we are a science-based initiative, I would like to see your point of view regarding, is cooking a science? Did more science come into cooking? How does that relate? Because I think you do specifically there in your teaching classes a lot of scientific based cooking, and I want you to share that with the audience. They might think cooking is something like alchemy, something potion mixed together, something very secretive. What is cooking today? How scientific is it? How scientific will it be in the future?
So great question. So I will say baking is definitely a science. You need that precision, and it's interesting because my baking students and my pastry chef think very differently than my chefs do, right? Whereas with chefs, and cooking in itself, it is a science. There are, chemical reactions or reactions that happen between sugars and with the caramelization and heat and, all of that fun stuff that we teach. But then it's not as exact or precise as I think a scientist would like it to be, right? And because you also have the creativity piece. So some people will read a recipe and follow it to a T, but a really good chef or a good cook can look at a recipe, understand the technique, and then they put their own twist on it. And that, so I don't know if that's technically a good scientific answer. However, I think a lot of it has to do with love and on the cooking side and passion. And I really think that with any field, whether it's science or cooking or anything, passion has to come through, because if you're not really into a project or into a dish or into what you're doing, it's not going to work out for anyone, actually.
That's a perfect closing remark, Francine, because I love that specifically also personally. I think passion is the main ingredient for success. So also for women in academia, women in science in general, if you have the passion like you have and show that so perfectly well on screen, you can become successful, and you are successful. It's inevitable then. So yeah, show passion, show love for what you do. I think that's a perfect closing remark for our session today. Thank you so much, Francine. We definitely stay in touch like we did over the last years, and perhaps there's a sequel to this one. Thank you so much and have a great day. Thank you. Bye.
Thank you, Dirk. I appreciate it.